Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Living Through a Renovation. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Michelle, and I'm the executive assistant at TQ Construction. I'm helping behind the scenes today. Before we begin, a few housekeeping notes. This session is being recorded. A recording link will be shared in a follow-up email within a week, most likely a couple days. Please stay muted throughout the webinar to avoid any disruptions. We will have a Q&A at the end, and feel free to write any of your questions along the way in the chat box below, and Henry will answer at the very end. And now I'm happy to officially introduce you all to today's webinar host and TQ's president, Henry.
Thank you, Michelle. Good to be here with everyone. There we go. We're here to talk about living through renovation. So some of the topics we'll talk about, what it's like, when should you, when shouldn't you, and how should you prepare for it, and how do you manage living through it. So as Michelle mentioned, I'm Henry, president of TQ Construction. Michelle is my assistant and very much more. She kind of helps make me be productive and keep our company on track. So big thank you to her. So why don't we get started? Start off with kind of a quick overview of what we're talking about here. So the main focus is living through a project. So Martha, yourself, and as other people join, I'll encourage you to just like add, as Michelle mentioned, add some questions to the chat as we're going. It's a really common conversation as we talk to people about planning projects. First off, why do people stay in their homes when you're thinking about taking on a project? Can you live through it? Does your project make sense to you? Like, is the real question. At what stage do you need to move out versus when is it feasible to stay within? What are some of the concerns that might happen that you might want to manage as you're living through a project? And then we want to touch on some examples through living through a different types of projects. So we have a kitchen renovation, bathroom renovations, and then also phase projects, which are a larger consideration overall that we can dig into. And so let's get started. First off, why does anybody stay in their home? Naturally, renovations are disruptive. They're dusty, messy, noisy. There's people in your home all the time. So why bother? Well, first off, cost is a big one. Rentals are challenge like rentals, especially for short term or a fixed term, like 3, 6, 12 months, can be challenging or expensive to find, especially if you're looking for something furnished and not moving all of your furniture. It's also a different headache where you have to manage your moving and packing in a larger way than if you're accommodating a renovation. There's also your own typical routine. Do your kids go to school nearby and they use and spend time with friends and play sports in the neighborhood? Whereas if maybe your alternative rental is, 30 minutes away. Naturally, if you're working in a part of the home, that means that you're able to like separate off from the rest. If you're able to have a section off a part of the space, then when you're living through the project starts to make a little bit more sense. Because while you're giving up some of your home to the project, you're still able to kind of accomplish your typical day-to-day routines and cycles with some accommodations. And so can you live through it? And this is very much a personal question. I've found that everybody has a very different tolerance to dust, noise, and disruption and people in your space and experiencing construction. Some folks are very happy to have just a bunch of people around and involved in working and like seeing and being a part of the progress. Whereas some folks very much are not interested in being so close to the project day to day. Like a construction team is typically working, between 7:30 and 4 every single day. Sometimes a little bit on Saturday, sometimes a little later into the evening if we're trying to hit a deadline. The other thing to consider is the time of year that you're doing the project and kind of what amenities you want to have available throughout the project. So something to think about is how much, if we're doing a deck project, how much do you expect to use it outside? How often are you in the rooms adjacent to it if we're changing a door? If you're approaching Christmas, do you want to start a project in November, which means you're not going to have full access to your kitchen and living room, for example? And another consideration is what is the extent of the project? Like how much of your house can you feasibly live in? If we're like if you have a large home and we're going to alter a good amount of it, can you live in like 30% of the space? Like can you live in a bedroom, a bathroom, and a small cooking area and a small place to like entertain and watch TV? For example, in an extreme case. Whereas, or can you do without having your principal bathroom out of commission, um, and sharing a bathroom with the rest of your family? Those are some of the considerations you'll have to make as you're thinking through, is it worth it to live through the project or to find an alternative place to live? So, what makes it make sense? There are trade-offs in taking on a project in phases. So if you were to look at renovating your whole home and considering, do you want to live through that? Can you move out to do the whole project? Or maybe you do one floor at a time, or maybe you do one bathroom at a time. Um, there's an advantage in terms of cash flow by phasing the work, and both because you can spread the entire project out over a greater number of years, but then also you're not required to move out. A major consideration is, do you have a working toilet and shower for the duration of the work? My advice to families that we work with is, if we're going to be taking on a project and you plan on living through it, you should maintain one working bathroom that you have access to. Uh, the alternative is pretty uncomfortable. It's only ever been done in our company's history with a family that lived very close to a community center that was open quite early in the morning and into the evening, and they essentially structured their day around basically showering and like getting changed in their workouts and whatnot. And the other factor is your family. If you have elderly parents, young kids, is it going to be okay for them to be present while you're doing a major project? Is it safe for them to be in the home if, we have some walls open, if there's some rough wiring ongoing? Or do you have to kind of plan around that? So there are some cases where you definitely need to move out. Um, Major example is really anything where we're significantly altering the structural and the envelope of the building. Um, a house lift, we're lifting the house off its foundations. It is not safe to be inside to live in. You know, uh, 30, 40 years ago, people used to do it, but it's definitely not okay now. Uh, if we were to fully gut the interior of the home, that is, we are removing all the drywall, all the finishes, everything in the house, kind of like you see in this image here. Um, you can't live through that. The home is essentially not conditioned. There's barely enough power there's only enough power to run our tools, and we only have a temporary toilet on site. The other case is a top story addition. This is when we are lifting off the roof and then adding square footage above your existing home. Side and rear additions, however, you can live through depending on the scope of the interior space. You can add a bunch of square footage to the building without having to compromise the interior in a crazy way, as long as you're kind of being disciplined. And then lastly, if you're doing a project, that means that there'll be extensive periods where you are without kind of your key like utilities or amenities, whether that's your toilet, electricity, water, heating, or cooling. And then what are some of the concerns that it's natural for you to have? Um, you might be concerned about, what's it going to be like? Is it going to be comfortable in the home? Like, is it going to be colder? Is it going to be hotter if it's in the summer? Will I be exposed? Will the rain get in? Will there be demolition? Will the demolition create a hazmat exposure? Will it be safe for me to be there? And so those are all things that do are real concerns and that do need to be managed through the course of the project. Um, there'll be accommodations around all of those depending on your scope. Um, it will be the if you're making some alterations to the envelope or the exterior of the building, there's likely to be periods when the house doesn't hold its heat as well, or it doesn't keep the cold in as well. Um, and that'll be a period of, ideally, hopefully not too long, um, but it's something you kind of just got to live through. Weather will be mitigated. Like, it's our job to keep the water on the outside of the building. Like, that's something that has to happen. Um, you'll find that hazmat is managed as part of the project planning process. So as any contractor, us or anybody who's kind of worth their salt has a clear set of plans ahead of time, they'll be able to do a full takeoff with a hazmat like testing qualified professional, and then they'll provide us like a lab report that says what specifically is hazardous in the building, if anything, and then we'll follow the correct procedures, work with a remediation company to kind of make sure everything is safe and ready for us to do our work, and that the air quality of the home is acceptable for everyone to live in. The site in our work area, however, will not be as safe as the rest of the home. Like it'll be kept construction safe, and so you shouldn't expect to be able to use our workspace as part of your home while the project is ongoing. You should expect us to maintain some regular and proper site protection throughout the space. So that is like, railings and guards over anywhere where there's a potential fall, like around staircases, or if we're doing an addition. Uh, excuse me. Also, you should expect dust protection and floor protection to protect your finished surfaces and to keep our mess on our side and your mess on yours, so to speak. Um, it's also on a good contractor's responsibility to keep a clean and tidy site. What that allows for is for it to be safe and to be efficient. Um, it's also you might want to you should expect your contractors to keep you informed of what any concerns may be. So every once in a while there's a fall or a tripping hazard that we can't avoid. We will mark that, but then also it's our job to inform you or anyone who comes in to be careful. And then naturally, as you're going through the project, you'll have concerns about everything I just referenced. And you should expect your contractor to be able to kind of address those, talk you through how those will be managed and what their plans of action are for how to deal with those things. And so now we're going to get into a bit of like what's it like and how do you live through some of these projects. So for kitchen projects, it's a kitchen is an integral part of your home. It's aside from your bedrooms, it's where you typically will spend most of your time, and at least most times in a day. So there's a few ways to manage it. One is, when possible, we can set up a temporary kitchen elsewhere in the home. That's usually a combination of relocating the fridge somewhere outside of our workspace, ideally next to a sink, so you can still rinse your vegetables, wash your dishes. And then either we'll set up a temporary cooking facility where, if we can, it's somewhere where we can run a dedicated circuit. Or we've had plenty of clients essentially just barbecue for the duration of the project, which can be pretty fun. Um, Another consideration is how you manage like the shared walls. And so naturally, when we're banging and moving things around, installing material, you want to make sure all of your stuff is away from anything that touches anything close to where we're working. We do not want anything to kind of fall down, break, or chip or anything like that. Uh, and every once in a while, we have a large kitchen and great room type combo area. And depending on what our scope is, we'll either take over the full space or we'll partition it off and build like a temporary set of walls that are kind of held in place that kind of keep your side to you and then our side to us. And that's usually best decided as we plan the project together. Because once our scope becomes clear, then we'll have a good idea of like what part of the house we'll need to get involved in and into which degree. And so we get into bathroom renovations. Um, and so, like I mentioned earlier, I would only recommend living through a project where we're renovating bathrooms, where you have an additional bathroom for you to use through the course of the project. This could be in the basement, and we're redoing the bathroom right off of your bedroom. That's fine. It's just a few more steps for you to take in the day. However, it's something to think about, and to take very seriously when you're going to live through a project. Um, you may need to move out of the bedroom that if we're say doing the primary bathroom in the home. Um, excuse me, because that becomes a high traffic area, and unless you want to be awake pretty early, you don't. And I don't think you really want to sleep in a work zone. It's best that you sleep in another room other than that bathroom is accessed through. And some a point of order about bathrooms, in relation to the note about timelines here, is that they take a little longer than everyone feels like they should because they're a small room. But even if you look at the picture in the background here, every detail you see involves multiple professionals. So, like looking at a shower, there's at least 4 or 5 different trades that need to be involved in finishing that space. And so we want to be clear that like each one has to kind of go step by step through it. And so it's very challenging to get them all to do their work together at the same time. And so the nature of a bathroom renovation is it takes a little bit longer, usually a couple months. Now, a great option when you're planning a renovation is to put together a master plan for your entire home. That is to say, we may be looking to do your kitchen now, and that involves maybe relocating a partition wall. And if that's the case, what we should consider doing is designing everything you're thinking about doing for the home in one shot. So that way we consider that all of our steps can line up in the future. Uh, and when you're then out of that, you can roll out a phased approach to transforming your space. So you can start in your kitchen, in your great room, then roll into your master suite and bedrooms, and then maybe down into your entertaining space and create like an in-law space in your basement. However, this makes it easier to live through a series of renovations. Ideally, I'd recommend you take a gap time in between starting these projects. I feel like the fatigue of living through construction space can wear on people. Um, and as a result of doing these projects out of like in a stepped or a phased approach, the total completion time naturally gets extended and longer than any one project would take because you have these gaps in between. And because there's gaps, we also see some additional costs for the restarting of the construction in each phase. There's a few things to consider here. One would be what is the level, like what is the just cost increase due to inflation? And then the other part is every professional or vendor or supplier who's involved in a project is going to have a built-in startup cost for them to show up on site. And so you kind of recur those costs every time you take on a new phase of work. This still may be the best decision for your home and your family. It is for a lot of the people we work with, but these are all some of the considerations you need to make when you're planning your next project. And so, in review, we kind of covered today why you might want to live through a project. Can you do it? Does it make sense? When should you move out? What are some of the concerns you might have, how to manage them? And then we closed off with talking through what's it like and how do you mitigate living through kitchen renovations, bathroom renovations, and then we touched a bit up on the advantages and trade-offs to living through phase renos. And so that brings us to the question and answers period of our webinar here. If you have any, I'd love to address them.
Thank you, Henry. There doesn't seem to be any questions at this moment, but definitely open for discussion right now. Um, mhm. I believe any attendees, feel free to ask us questions now. If not, and you can feel free to contact us and follow up with any questions that you may have. Oh, we do have one question. How long does a bathroom reno take? For example, a small bathroom.
Great question. I find the answer to everything is it depends. If you're updating the entire space, so what I mean, kind of the easiest answer to give is if you're taking all of the finishes off, so you're taking all the tile off, all the plumbing, cabinets, lighting, everything, and then putting all new stuff in, maybe changing a few things around. I'm assuming we say a small bathroom, like you're thinking like a typical three-piece bathroom. Uh, Usually you'll see that take at least 2 months. Um, there's possibilities of speeding that up, and there's also really great ways of having that take a little bit longer, depending on what you decide to do in your space itself.
Hmm. So it's been specified to be an 8 feet by 8 feet bathroom.
Yeah, that's actually not too small of a bathroom. It's probably a bit on the medium side. And yeah, I would say that would likely be about at least 2 months of its construction time.
Great questions. Any other questions we may have? Still have a little while here. Oh, and then so we have another question. I've looked at rental costs. Do you know of resources? Um,
Uh, for rentals, I think you probably are, if you've been looking around, you probably have seen something similar resources I have. Naturally, there's the the typical just online listings, but there
mhm,
are the other option also is I know some realtors do provide a managed rental service as well, because they may have some clients who live they know split their time between Vancouver and other cities, and so they're aware that for specific clients they can find rental spaces. So maybe if you have a good relationship with your realtor, it's worth asking them as well.
Yep, the internet is a useful tool there. Another question. Yep. So that was thank you, Express,
Great.
for answering the question. So yeah, feel free to if there are any other questions that come about in the next couple of days or so, feel free to contact us, email us, give us a call. We'll be happy to answer them. And I think that's it for today. We will be having webinars in the upcoming year in 2026. Today is the last one for 2025, and we will be sharing those dates once we determine them. So we do look forward to connecting with everyone in the next webinars. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay,
If you'd like to talk about a project, please do reach out.
thank you. Bye, everyone.